what I'd like to do today is actually, like the discussions we were having, just keep them informal, go back and forth. We know we're at kind of the cutting edge of what's going on here, so it isn't like we can tell you this is exactly what you're supposed to do. But I'd like the focus to be on the fact that recently I've seen lots of passes. This has been mature enough now, and I think we're going through a rather standard phase where this happens. And then I want to talk about kind of the wildcard preview protocol and how it might fit in with this. The world of consciousness is not flat. I think all of you know what I mean by that. There's so much more to it. We're just beginning to get past the equivalent of when they thought the physical earth was flat, I think, and really taking in that the capabilities of our consciousness are just incredibly huge is what I believe the mindset of us, all of us, including myself, needs to adapt more and more and sort of take for granted and never put these limits on ourselves, even the limits of simple versus complex. Yes, when you're a beginner just beginning to get this, I understand the logic of starting out with simple targets. However, with the objective of growing to get to the point where each of us, and this is really a personal journey, even though we're in a group environment to kind of maximize our results, it's each of us that needs to get resonating and living moment to moment with the fact that we're connected with everything and bring it into our lives. I really believe that's the objective and the beauty of what we're doing here, because it's a perfect environment to allow us to grow, and in a practical way. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what I'm seeing with this lot of passes. First of all, yes, we can get a lot of information from the future. All of us here have been around enough. We know that. Well, you know what? Yes, we know you have precognitive abilities. You're psychic. It's time for us to simply accept that. What I have been seeing, and I'm seeing it in spades, and it also connects with displacement, is that our next step is to kind of improve and fine-tune these abilities. For a long time, it seemed clear to me that what displacement was a subconscious still saying, look, I can see lots of stuff, guys. I can even see other things in the future that you're not asking me for. You know, I don't know exactly why the sub does it, but the sub looks around. Yes, it has access to everything. Let's accept that. And now let's work with our subs and get it to focus on the target. Focus on gathering the information from and only from the feedback target. I just seem really so clear now that that's the next challenge, kind of as a ARV community, a precognitive community that we need to take on. I'm getting these passes not with low numbers. You know, all know the TARG system. I'm not getting 2s and 3s. I'm getting 4s and 5s. It's clear that the subs are looking at both things long before you have any opportunity to actually see them. So that's the challenge. My feeling is that people are not, now this is a hypothesis, but people are not paying enough attention to the feedback. They're not really taking on the precognitive mindset, which basically says, and you can say it in at least 10 different ways, but the simplest is the precognition begins with the feedback. What we were talking about with what Darren was doing, what I've been saying, for years, all of us are saying, Pudov obviously supports it. I think everybody recognizes that the information is coming, you're being entangled with the feedback target. I'm going to say it, in SRI, they had outbounders. I mean, can you get a more forceful feedback session than taking the viewer to the actual physical site and spending time there, touching it, listening to the sounds? Begins with the feedback. And I believe all of us just need to emphasize that more, but not in an intellectual sense, just sort of begin to take it for granted. We're going to be talking about it now, and I'm hoping to change some behaviors here so that indeed you get into your feedback session more. And I believe that can be done very nicely with the wildcard protocol. So let me now get to my Excel sheet here. And I want to review the wildcard protocol and the steps with some new suggestions. The first thing you're used to doing is you describe and sketch your first coordinate, okay? So this is your tasking with your coordinate. You want to take a break because these are, and this has got to be the mindset, and this is kind of important because you want each of these to be treated as being totally independent. These are two different tasks, period, from the remote viewing perspective. This is one remote viewing task. You're going to get feedback on it. This is another remote viewing task with a different coordinate. You're going to get feedback on that. You send these off to your group manager, and the group manager receives that. Right now, and I started doing this with the groups, rather than you randomly choosing a wild card, and I know that's being done in Sublime, and in fact I'm not even suggesting a change, but in my groups, are now sending the wild card back to you and emphasizing that this is your feedback target for one of these two. I've actually taken the point of view that the viewer should focus on viewing and nothing else. I don't want, and this is the mindset that I've had that led me to this, I don't want the viewer to have to worry about anything else, think about anything else, be intellectual about anything else. I'm going to send you the target, but that is your feedback target. Okay? There it is. You're going to pay attention to it. And you now take another break, and now what you do is your feedback session on this one. You pay a lot of attention to it. Well, you want to know one way to pay a lot of attention to it? Is to actually analyze and judge it versus your two transcripts. I would and want you to pay attention to these and send those two confidence rankings back to me. Okay? So that's a little different in the protocol, but I believe it's important because you are now forced, and in fact the position should be you want to pay a lot of attention to your feedback target, and just doing the standard TARG ranking system, it forces you to pay attention to it, and you rank it compared to both of your transcripts. One of these will hopefully give you a 5, a 4, And that, of course, then when I see it, I'll say, aha, that's your wild card. And you will, of course, be thinking the same sort of thing. So that's really a new step here. But this is your feedback target, the wildcard feedback target. Of course, we won't know for sure, but in many ways, you are doing the feedback here on the wildcard. You're really getting into it. Now, then you're going to be sending that off to me, and I'm in parallel here. Now, one of the things I want to say about this one is, notice here you have got one target and you're comparing it to two transcripts. It's not like binary. In binary, you have one transcript and you're comparing it to two targets. This is different. You've got one target, you're focusing on that target and comparing it to two transcripts. Okay, now the general manager now basically has your wildcard stuff. He's got these two transcripts, and he's got his IPSs, and he's doing his thing over here, and taking all of that data, and he then, or she, will reach a prediction. He'll email that prediction, just as we're doing now, to everybody, and the outcome is known. So except for this change here, it's pretty much what we've been doing with the wildcard preview. The after the outcome is known, then the group manager sends the feedback target, the actual group feedback target, the actualized one, to the viewers, and the viewers now do their AJing with this target versus the actual transcript, period. Don't have to look at the other transcript. This is the detailed feedback session that you do. And now the focus is on this feedback session. Here, you'll all be doing it on the same group feedback target. Here, I send out wildcards which are different to everybody. I still am a strong believer in this being coherent, this being incoherent. And then now, here, and let me just see if I said it, versus the associate transcript, and okay, and send, and what I want to make very clear here is I want you to send the CRs back to the GM. So you're going to send the confidence rankings back to me, and I then in turn will tell you how I had judged it as part of my analysis. This then gives us a real opportunity to discuss everything, to celebrate together. Under the ideal situation, there was a guy that did this. It was all locals. They would meet, celebrate their hits, come up with ways to celebrate the whole process if they did not get a hit, but have a jolly old good time with it all, and recognize that they're growing and going to be continuing to grow and get better forever. That's the mindset I would really like us to move into, where we actually use this sharing of the confidence rankings as an important part of the process. Okay, whether or not you go back and look at your wild card back here, frankly, I don't know. This is simpler. I'm trying to keep it simple because I want people to do their feedback, spend the time there. Whether you go back with your wild card here, contemplate it, the whole purpose is the learning. And if you wanted to do that, the viewer is in charge. Okay, if there are comments or anything, please feel free to jump in at any time here.
Can you go back to that? Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead, John.
Go ahead, Alexis.
Just to clarify, the step 8, it's a random wildcard image for each person.
Not quite random, because I do believe choice of targets, now let me say this carefully, is important because I want to maximize our hits. It turns out as we get better and better, it'll become less important. Because if you're a Joe McMonagle, don't you think when you send your consciousness to the site at the time the photo was taken, you don't care what it is, you're going to describe it.
Right.
But hell, he describes electrons. These guys can describe anything. Ingo Swann described the difference between 2 kinds of graph papers. What could be more boring than that? But I try to make the targets as interesting as possible. So it's in that context. So I do have a collection of what I consider to be good targets. It'll be chosen randomly out of that collection.
What I mean is that John would get a picture of a giraffe. I would get a picture of an
That
animal.
is true. Yes.
Okay.
Incoherence is important.
Okay.
So you have to choose as a general manager a different, it seems like it would be very time consuming for the general manager, more so than before, but it seems like there's more interaction and more accountability. It seems like the accountability is really important.
And the accountability of the general manager?
No, no, those are two different ideas. Sorry. The accountability would be for the viewer to really interact with the wild card and send it back to the general manager. So the accountability is I'm going to get into every single detail and actually write a CR on my paper and turn it back in.
You got it. That's exactly right. That's why I'm doing it. I think the general manager should take up the time that the viewer was doing by sending it off to him, and the viewer then exactly picks up the responsibility, if you will, to really get into it and do the feedback session, and pay a lot of attention to both of the transcripts and do the judging and get into it not only intellectually but down at, okay, what was I doing here in terms of my subconscious talking to me about this picture?
Yeah. What I was going to say something along the same lines. It looks like this procedure strengthens the bonds of the group, mainly though intellectually, because it involves the viewers maybe helping build a group mind or whatever you want to call it. But one question I had, and I like it, I'd like to try it, but as an alternative, I wondered if you thought about this alternative. You say that the first one, the wildcard feedback, is you want to keep the decoherence. You want to have different wildcards for each viewer.
Right.
And for the actualized target, you want to have the same target for the whole group. An alternative would be to send the same wildcard feedback target to all the viewers too, which might also increase group coherence. As I say, I like the way you have it, but that's an alternative to think about.
It is an alt.
Yeah, Mary, sorry, I just want to jump on that point.
Yeah.
This is Gordon, by the way.
Hi, Gordon.
It's been a coincidence for me twice, once in Verve Group and with you, that it just so happened that my wildcard was very similar to the actualized target. And I was just saying, if you sent out one wildcard and just made sure it was really different, would that have advantages?
It does. I understand that option. Now it seems to me we are getting too close to the binary, and I give up the incoherence. How much you do, what the trade-offs are, is a good. It's a good issue, and frankly, I don't know the answer to that. I will say this, since I do know the IPSs. While I say this is random, from the good collection, I will work to make the wild card somewhat different, but I frankly don't think that matters. You see, the issue of it mattering comes from the fact that you're afraid, and I use that word carefully, that you're going to displace. Get over that, guys. Displacement is part of, yes, you're going to get over it. You know how you're going to get over it? Because you're going to stay focused on your feedback and you're only going to describe that. So one of these two coordinates is going to match this. And if it turns out they both match it, okay, that's one of those times where maybe it is the same as the actualized one. And that's why we might not be 100%. And that's fine. But guess what? You did a good job. And that's what matters. If we just keep getting better and better at this, you know what? the few times this other stuff happens is going to be totally inconsequential. We get up to 70% hit rates, all the wagering that we're doing, all the interest in getting better and better is just going to happen. And that needs to be the focus, I believe. And then this other stuff will just sort of go away. Right? So you did get the same. The only effect on that is that you weren't able maybe to place a wager because now the two things were the same. Not because you're seeing both pictures, but because both pictures are the same. And you'll know that. You'll be able to say, oh, I see why I got 2 5s. Because, you know, one picture was of a waterfall and the other picture was of a lake with a speedboat on it or something like that, you know, and I got very much the same thing, but you'll understand it.
Right.
And, in fact, you'll feel good about it. So as long as you just keep describing your one picture, the mysteries will start getting less and less.
Okay.
I'd like to speak to Gordon's comments, too, that it's uncanny. He said we pick wild cards that match the target or something like that. And I just think as we see transcripts coming in and see that happening more and more, that's it's really cool, but it doesn't help. It makes it confusing. But that happens in Sublime frequently, what he was talking about. I think if you send, Marty, the general manager, sends different targets, wildcard targets to each viewer, it might help prevent that. I don't know anything about it. But the other thing that one of the things that I see in Sublime when I've got all the transcripts in front of me, I'll see a funny, odd, non-related symbol drawn on almost all the transcripts. And I'll think, where did that come from? And what is that about? With different images coming one for each viewer for the wild card, it seems as though if one person's having an emotional day or is really broadcasting their transcripts, the others might not pick up on it so easily because it's more random, hopefully. Might prevent those weird things from showing up on all of the transcripts.
I know. All this stuff is so interesting, and it does show as a group, and I am trying to make the groups get closer by discussing the same pictures and all that kind of stuff and going back and forth. The subconscious is just doing all this stuff, and now we want to convince it, and I think it's not a matter of convincing it. I now believe it's a matter of making sure it gets it, what we want. We want it to give us back the very specific information associated with the one coordinate. Okay. So that's the summary. Now, and maybe I said all this, I believe it's very beneficial to have the viewers provide the CRs for both feedback targets. Now notice one is before the outcome is known, and one is after. And this one is really just very unusual. It's sort of taken me a while to appreciate it, but I believe it's kind of not only cool but important because it's one photo site judged against 2 transcripts. Never really did that before. That's something unique to this one ARV. And it forces the focus on the photo site. So it really is good for feedback, I believe. And then the other one is after, and now the focus is on the group one. Everybody is going to be focusing on this one. So I'm still a believer in coherence, incoherence, but, you know, time will tell. Now, last view graph. I'm dating myself, slide. And what I wanted to point out is I'm still very much attached to the TAR confidence ranking system. I have no problem with people using other systems, but somehow I would like us all to connect it with this in my groups, because this is more, it's not linear. This is more like bridge. This is a way of communicating to your partner. The viewer is going to be communicating to the judge. The judge, when I give CRs back to you, I'm communicating to you. But the kind of thing I'm communicating is, okay, down here I think we all understand no correspondence, little correspondence, something pretty much like random. Okay, so these three are really similar in my mind in terms of the precognition. You didn't get much precognition. Here we're saying, you know what, maybe I did touch and maybe I got a little precognition. 4, I'm saying now I would be willing to bet that this was not chance. I'm actually going to wager. And in fact, so many of us have suffered when we first started between 3 and 4. We introduced 3.5 as a place where you're saying, yes, I believe with a reasonably high probability that there was precognition going on here. And by the time I get to 5, this unambiguous, unique, matchable element, and when you give me a 5, I'm going to ask you, and if I give you a 5, you should ask me, what was the unambiguous, unique, matchable element? So it's not linear. This is a significant break. Here I'm saying the subconscious made a match with that target this strongly, period. I think that's a 5. I could almost stop it here, except we've all seen this AOL stuff. See, 6 and 7 is of a different nature. If I give a target a 6 or a 7, it isn't more of the same of this. I'm now telling my partner, whoever I'm communicating with, that this was good AOL stuff. I named the function and got it right. You know, we've all been around the track enough to know when you do an AOL, hey, it might be wrong. I think it might have come from my intellect. But you know what? When it's right, that's pretty good. And I'm also now saying there was very little incorrect information. You know, some of you give me lots and lots of stuff in transcripts, and it would be hard for you to ever get a 6 just because there's so much stuff in there. It turns out it's the way you do it, no problem. If that's the way you feel comfortable, I'm willing to judge. But when there's a lot of information, just by chance there's a good match, the AOL might match. And then of course being right on with very little incorrect information, that's a 7, and I have seen a few 7s, and more 6s, but not, you know, all that many. But we get some 6s, and keeping track of that for our database is very important. Okay, but you understand this is a communication vehicle which allows me to talk about all of this, and the one-to-one correspondence is not clear with those of you that keep percentages. Okay, let's talk. What do you think? You're going to do it in my groups, guys? Because I'm going to start sending you wildcards afterwards. And are you going to be sending back your CRs to me?
I will.
Yeah, Nancy will too.
Okay.
What's the timeline, Marty, on how much time are you going to allow elapse before you send the wild card?
I'm, as soon as I get, I mean, I have a life, but a good portion of my life is in front of my computer right here. And as soon as I get both of your transcripts, I will send back the wild card. And what I'd like you to do is do your feedback session as soon as you get to your computer and do it. And I think most of the time that will be in time for me to do the judging and incorporate it. And if I don't get it sometime, then I won't use it. What I have set up is I like to get the prediction back to you guys 3 to 4 hours before the actual sport event or financial. Financial is easy because that's the night before. But, I want to give you 3-4 hours to be able to put in a wager, those of you that wager. And so sometimes if I don't have the information back in time, fine, I'll make it with all the information I have. So I'm just, we're a group. We'll do it on that kind of time frame. And I think it'll work fine. So far, when I've been sending it back, I've been getting the confidence rankings back relatively quickly. So it's working fine.
Marty, would it hurt anything when the general manager sends out the prediction to put the coordinate of that prediction so that we can look at our transcripts and see how it compared to the group, or no?
Say that again. Wait.
So you've got all of the information all computed. You, the general manager, has it all figured out. Now I'm going to put out the prediction, and it's 5 for over and 2 for under, and it's going to be over. Well,
right.
When you say 5 for over, if you could say 5 for over 49321 and 2 for under 432, whatever the target number is, does that hurt does that change it up too much to do that?
Now that's very interesting. And my first reaction was that might help. I haven't been doing it because way back, God, that's interesting, Nancy. Thank you. Way back, I really wanted to keep everybody blind and not thinking about this over, under, and all that, just to keep the focus more on the feedback. But now that we're doing the wild card, if I were to do that, this would give the viewer, again, more interest because they do have their wild card, and they would now, for the first time, be able to independently see whether or not their wild card was on the other side of what the group prediction is. That's interesting. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm thinking this through out loud. But right here, if I gave you the coordinate, which is what you're suggesting,
yeah.
You did the analysis and judging here, and you said, oh, my wild card is 654321 because I give it a 5 and I give this one a 2. Okay? So you now know this is your wild card, which means without much of a leap, you're suggesting that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is going to be the group prediction. So you know that here. I come here and I tell you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the group prediction. You now say, yes, I'm at least in agreement with that at this point.
And then I can wager if I'm in agreement. Or if I'm not in agreement, then maybe I'll pass even though the group's making a decision.
More comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Sounds great. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Gives you gives you more information on whether to bet or not, and sometimes I'm in that position too. I like it.
Right.
But isn't the problem that then that's essentially becoming our feedback, and it might be faulty feedback because it's not really about what ultimately happened?
Wait. Now, let's be careful here. Deborah, oh, I'm so glad you asked that. Let's be really careful here. Feedback is your picture. The important
I'm sorry. I understand that, but what's happening is when you make a big deal for the viewer, it starts feeling like, I mean, you could say that's not my feedback, but I get an email, I get excitement around this is what the prediction is, this is, you know, it's kind of like that starts to feel like feedback to the viewer.
Wait, what feels like feedback?
It, like halfway through the process, you're sending, well, this is our wager, this is making a big deal about this is our wager, and to me, like that, the process as a viewer of receiving an email that says, here's the prediction, here's the waiver, even when it says like this one was, you know, a 5 and this was a 2, like that is feedback. You know, technically, that by definition, it's information being passed back to the viewer about an assessment that was made from the session. So even though you don't want that to be feedback, that's not your intention, that is how it is perceived.
It is part of the feedback, Deborah, I agree. But it is, the most significant part of the feedback is the target. This is not the target. I mean, I agree with you. By giving the coordinates, I think we're again focusing information on the target. But it doesn't mean we got the right answer. That we don't know, and this is what you're pointing out, that we don't know until the outcome is known. I wonder if there should be a break here.
I think you're referring to confidence level. You know, I think that's what it's affecting is confidence, which I agree with Deborah. It could affect. It's perceived as feedback in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is. It's going to change the way people wager, and that's why I added the wager wisely here, because it could do that for sure, Deborah, because it is, and we are making a bigger deal of that, which actually does put a bit more, I guess, of a burden on this wager wisely, which is part of us growing up.
Really, ideally, if we were going to cut out the noise, so to speak, the viewer wouldn't receive anything, even mention of what the wager was until it was time for feedback.
I agree with that 100%.
But I know that can't be part of the process.
No, that's not true. There have been, and I hope in the future there will be projects where we can find people who are willing to pay viewers. Notice in this approach, the viewer gets information and wagers wisely themselves, and that's a kind of payment. Imagine if we had a situation where there was an outsider who wanted information and paid for it. Then I agree 100% with you. We would not even let the viewers know what the wager is. They're doing this for a fee.
Well, also, Karsten did that with another viewer. They did 20. The viewer wasn't given any information at all till the whole series was over, and I guess Karsten placed bets for that person. And that totally takes the tension or the expectations or everything off the viewer. The viewer just views, turns it in, and at the end of the whole thing, he finds out what the results were. But of course, that's a rare thing that hardly anybody's done.
Well, yeah, I did do that in the investment club, and it worked beautifully. We were up at 80% for a while, too, and then it fell off. However, in those days we were doing straight binary, and I think there were boredom factors, and there were other things which dominated that. But anyway, the point is well taken about this, and all of us need to feel comfortable with this, with the wagering aspect of it, to not add noise. And that's why I always say you should bet at a level where there's no additional stress. Other comments? There's some new people here who I haven't seen, and please raise some questions. Some of you are not even in any of our groups, and if you're interested in doing so, please let me know, because we have existing groups that you can join, or maybe you know people. I would love to encourage new groups as well. So you obviously have my email or you wouldn't be here. So do stay in touch, new people.
Yeah, Marty, I have a quick question, and I apologize if it's not absolutely relevant, but I mean, the discussion was started with the fact that the CR scores were too high.
No, they were both high.
Yeah, right, exactly, both high.
Okay,
And I'm wondering, why do you think that is? Do you think, like, I can't match that to people not focusing on feedbacks, because it seems if people weren't focusing on feedback, then the CRs would be low, wouldn't they? And so I'm just wondering why you think that they're high.
Well, that's an interesting point. I think they're high because the sub is showing off.
Right.
And I mean, even if you don't focus on feedback, the sub has all the information.
Sure.
You know, I mean, you know, you talk to your cohorts who aren't in this, and you know, they even getting any information they don't want to believe. And here we are. Most of us are at the point where we believe we got access to all the information, and the problem is there's too much. What the focus on the feedback is to tell your sub, don't give me this other information with this particular coordinate. And I now, whenever I do remote viewing, I say the coordinate out loud. And when I do my feedback, well, of course, with the wildcards, you can't do that. So you can do that at the end.
Do you think it's possible that people are looking at both targets after the outcome, and we should at that point be... do you think it has anything to do with the amount of time spent looking at the actualized target and the amount of time spent looking at the wildcard target after the actualized outcome?
Well, that's one of the reasons I'm still vague on this, suggesting don't even look at the wild card afterwards. Just stick with the group photo. And you've done your feedback for the wild card already in terms of paying attention to that target. And you will believe it's associated with whatever your objective was. You'll know it for sure at the end. But anyway, look, Gordon, the correct answer to your question, I probably should have said that, is I don't know. I mean, the intellect, what we're now doing is trying to get an understanding of the subconscious and frankly, intellectually understand why it does what it does. But I believe it looks at reality, and I believe it has a much better and more fundamental look at reality than we do, because I've always said consciousness is the fundamental, and it's down there. But we're trying to get an appreciation of it and work out communication with it. And this system is designed to hopefully make that clearer, so it doesn't just keep giving us information about all the stuff that we're sort of focusing on, but gets better focused.
Okay.
But, you know, as all of us have said, you know, we've worked through so many systems. I'm not saying this is the best ever. I will tell you what I believe it is very good at. It is very good as a training vehicle. I feel very comfortable that by doing this, and you also now get to watch your own confidence rankings, and you'll be able to see how you did well and did not do well, and then ask your subconscious how come. I mean, this whole communication between you and your subconscious, this is a perfect setup for that. Right. And when I say you, I mean, yes, the intellectual part of you, which is doing the CRs, but at the same time it is communicating with the subconscious. This seems to be a perfect protocol for that.
Yeah. Okay. Bear in mind, it'd be my first time doing CRs, but so I may exaggerate how well I did.
Well, and you know what? You're going to get to see that. If you are constantly giving yourselves 4s and 5s and you too loosely define this, oops, let me get it this way. You too loosely define what unambiguous, I mean, these are very unambiguous, unique, matchable, and you find you keep getting misses on there. You need to really look at that. Are you defining this wrong, or is your subconscious for some reason causing you to get misses? Now, I said that because that's gone through my mind. The beauty of this system is nobody else is going to be involved. You're going to be looking at your own subconscious and trying to become comfortable with it. You know, it's like you're going to be meditating on the side, working to figure it out. You know, those of us that get into this, and again, I'm talking to all of you as if we're in this for the long term. You know, we're working to get our hit rates up for the long term. We're working to continually, and I believe this is never ending, getting better and better at this. Getting more in touch, your communication system will be better and better. And the hit rate is just simply a measure of that. So this goes on forever. And you'll just keep getting better and better at it. And you'll begin answering these questions. And at first, you know what? What you're going to be doing, Gordon, especially since this is new to you, and I think most of us have experienced it, it's going to change over time. And the way you build up your communication system is going to change over time with your sub. But you do learn it. Joe McMonagle, and maybe I can find that in a email exchange that we're having with just a bunch of sort of scientist-oriented people, was saying each person, each viewer has to do this on his own. When a viewer goes out and gets information about a remote site, that communication system is unique to that person. Just like some people are visual and some aren't. I mean, that is the highest level example I can think of right now.
Yeah, I see that totally.
Yeah, and so you have to work that out for yourself.
Okay.
Can we go back to that Excel sheet?
Absolutely.
Now, I like this process because it will actually force me to look at my feedback. My main concern is the timeline. I feel if I was the manager, I would want different due dates, I guess. What am I trying to say? It feels like you would need the sessions turned in sooner. And so I'm suggesting multiple due dates, I guess.
Other general managers may want to do that based on what I've seen from my group so far. And I've tested this over the last couple of weeks. where, uh, in fact, I did this with Russ very early on, and he was the one that sort of made the prediction in advance, and I don't know. He helped put all this together. Anyway, the timelines, every time I've asked people, has worked out, and I don't want to add anything else. But that's my feeling as a group manager. I'm willing to take on a little bit more work. In return, I want the remote viewers to spend more time and find the extra time in their lives to do the feedback. And if on one time or another they're not able to get it to me, fine. That's one of the nice things about a group. You know, if on one occasion I happen to give a wild card, which is the same as the group feedback, remember those are the only two they see. They only get two feedbacks. Fine. We'll all understand that. But since we're a group, that's not going to happen with other people. And so that's why, as a group, we're just going to continually do better and better. Anyway.
What is your ideal, I guess, if it's due on Sunday, when would you actually want the sessions turned in?
That morning. If it's due Sunday, I mean, for my sports stuff, I want it done by 6:30 in the morning. That's, you know, I get up in the morning, I roll out of bed, I work out of home, I am upstairs and start doing my feedback at 6:30. You know, I start before that in terms of printing it out and all that, but I want everything together by 6:30 in the morning, ideally, but I get wild cards usually after that. Now notice the wild cards. I do not judge them. I go totally, and that's important for you guys to know, I go totally by what the viewers give me in terms of their CRs. So those have to be honest CRs. So I do not independently judge it. So this is really self-judging, if you will, of that one transcript.
All right. On the A column, can you give me like actual times? So at 7.
This is for me.
That's like
here,
6:30.
I'll do for you a quick GM timeline.
Okay.
Okay, and this is in Pacific time. So I need all this by 6:30 a.m.
Okay.
Well, no, but you see this, I send these out in time, so that's not quite true. Let's put this down here. Let's put this down here. So that's 6:30 a.m. This is when I would like all of this, and I AJ all the data. I used to have all of this done by about 8 a.m. That was about when I would leave for my, depending on the day, I have tennis and paddle tennis. In fact, today I have a 9 o'clock game, so I have to leave here at 8:45. You know, as I say, I think it's important for viewers to do this. You need to integrate this in your life because it's going to become part of your life. All of us want this to be part of our lives. Those are the kind of people we want to work with. Those are the people we want in our groups. We want to make this part of our lives. So I used to get done by 8, but there have been times when I've sent out the wild cards to people. They were a little bit late, and so I would wait. I wouldn't do the prediction until I got more of the wild cards. So this can be until I'll even say 2 p.m. Most of the games don't start until like 6 o'clock, but sometimes they're earlier. So say noon. So I would say I would say that this is about, in my life, the way I'm living it now, this is when I get the predictions out in general. and then the outcome is known in the evening. 4 p.m. is kind of the earliest, and sometimes the late games I don't get the outcome until 10 p.m. Oh, in fact, yeah, if this is what the game started for, so the outcome is later, maybe 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And then sometimes I don't even get the feedback targets out to the next morning just because I'm doing stuff with my wife. I'm not paying attention. I don't want to, whatever. So, but I always get the feedback out the next morning. So, AJ.
So basically, between 6:30 and 8, we have to we have to judge our own session and turn it into you. Is that
by then, notice a lot of people give me their feedback, give me their transcripts a full day in advance. Some people do it immediately after they get the coordinates. They get the coordinate, they'd like to do it right then. Everybody's a little different. So then I give them their wild card. They have plenty of time. I've gotten plenty of wild cards quite early. But other people like to do it late. So it depends on the person.
Okay. I think that pretty much answers my question. I was just concerned, like, because I usually turn mine in like hours before, and so I was concerned if I turn mine in that late, I won't have the chance to actually do the whole process.
And that would be, and that is an issue, but notice I will send you a wild card. I might not get to analyze it, but I really believe the most important part is that you do for your growth. I mean, this is a rather unique kind of step here. You're going to be looking at your target, okay? It ultimately is going to be associated with one of these two coordinates, and you're going to see how well you did. And you're building up your ability to communicate with your subconscious, which is going to help the group one. So, you know, you get 5s on the group one on the correct one. That helps everybody. So this helps you no matter what. And that's got to be your point of view.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, Marty, can you send this spreadsheet out? So.
Yes. In fact, this is being recorded. What I will do soon, sometimes it takes a while for the recording to get done, is I will make links to everything I have shown you plus the recording. So you can go to the spreadsheet by itself and all that.
Okay, great, thanks.
I have a question.
Okay.
This is Nancy.
Hi, Nancy.
I got to participate in one of the groups, and I think it might have been Tom Atwater's group, where there were lots of judges, and we could see how each other the transcripts. We all got the same transcript, and then there was discussion about each one. I learned so much from that. That was just an incredible experience. What I really learned is that we're all so different, and our subs communicate so differently as general managers. Do you think, Marty, as you are getting to know us in your different groups better, or our subs get to know each other better, if I say my wild card is a 2 or 4 or whatever I judge it, that you'll be able to understand that maybe I'm more lenient than so-and-so, or that I judge higher than so-and-so, or I judge lower than so-and-so? Do you think you'll be able to interpret that pretty well? It seems like we're all so different. And it's hard to judge ourselves. Some of us are, I'll speak for myself, I seem to be really self-critical and don't see quite as much, or maybe I see more. I don't know.
The answer is yes, I think I will get to know you guys. And one of the reasons this becomes so important is we'll share. And so we'll begin to come to the same judging. And I saw that with Tom in that group. I thought that was really educational. We started out being all over the map, and after the third or fourth one, there were still differences, but we got closer. Because we talked about the targ. What does it really mean to be unambiguous and unique? You know, what do we think is chance and what isn't? And so I think there'll be a little bit of both. I will get to know the way the viewers judge. The viewers will get to know how I judge, so we'll understand the differences maybe when they occur. And I believe we'll get closer together over time.
Good. Very good.
Excellent. I'm happy to stop. I'm so glad that you guys came, and the interest level is so great. I love it. Well, keep precogging, group, and we'll end it here.
Thank you, Marty.
Thanks, Marty.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye, Marty.
Thank you. Bye.